To effectively mitigate the impact of US sanctions and AGOA termination, South Africa must adopt a structured strategic response plan (SRP) with clear timelines and policy actions. Below is a detailed 6 to 12-month implementation roadmap, considering policy interventions, government responsibilities, and sector-specific measures. Phase 1. Immediate countermeasures 0 to 3 months. Urgent interventions before sanctions take effect. 1. Government coordination and policy framework development. Timeline 0 to 1 month. Responsible offices: Presidency of South Africa, Policy Direction, Department of International Relations and Cooperation, DARCO, Diplomatic Engagement, Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, DTIC, Trade Realignment, National Treasury, Budgetary Planning. Key actions: convene an interministerial task force to assess AGOA exit and US sanctions implications. Fast-track a strategic trade diversification policy to expand markets beyond the US. Draft legislative amendments to strengthen foreign trade and investment protection laws. 2. Diplomatic engagement and trade diversification. Timeline 0 to 2 months. Responsible offices: DIRCO, Foreign Affairs and Trade, DTIC, Trade Agreements, South African Revenue Service, SARS, Customs and Tariffs. Key actions: engage BRICS, EU-AU and Middle Eastern partners to expand trade deals. Initiate negotiations with China, Russia and India for preferential trade agreements, PTAs. Sign trade and investment agreements with AFCFTA and Latin American markets. Implement new customs policies to ensure uninterrupted imports and exports. Phase 2, sector-specific stabilization 3 to 6 months. Strategic economic adjustments and market reconfiguration. 3. Industrial and manufacturing revitalization. Timeline 3 to 4 months. Responsible offices: DTIC, Industrial Policy, Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, DMRE, Steel and Energy Policy, Economic Development Department, EDD, Investment Strategy. Key actions: implement incentives for domestic production and local manufacturing capacity. Revive local steel production through tax breaks and industrial funding. Establish new export channels for the automotive sector in Asia and the Middle East. 4. Agricultural and food security stabilization. Timeline 4 to 5 months. Responsible offices: Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, DLRRD, DTIC, Trade Facilitation for Agro-Exports. Key actions: expand agricultural exports to BRICS, Gulf states and African markets. Offer subsidies and incentives to farmers affected by AGOA termination. Accelerate the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, implementation to replace US market losses. Phase 3, infrastructure and financial security measures spanning 6 to 9 months. Long-term economic adjustments and competitiveness enhancement. 5. Energy security and infrastructure development. Timeline 6 to 7 months. Responsible offices: DMRE, Energy Security, Eskom and Independent Power Producers, IPP. Key actions: expand renewable energy production to reduce reliance on fossil fuel imports. Fast-track public-private partnerships for power infrastructure. Improve port and transport infrastructure to increase trade efficiency. 6. Financial market stability and investment protection. Timeline 7 to 9 months. Responsible offices: South African Reserve Bank, SARB, Monetary Policy, National Treasury Fiscal Policy, Financial Sector Conduct Authority, FSCA, Investor Relations. Key actions: strengthen financial policies to prevent capital flight. Introduce investment incentives to attract capital from non-US investors. Expand currency swap agreements with China and BRICS nations to reduce dependency on the US dollar. Phase 4, Full economic diversification and market independence 9 to 12 months. Achieving economic resilience and sustainable growth beyond US sanctions. 7. Regional economic integration and trade expansion. Timeline 9 to 12 months. Responsible offices, DTIC and DIRCO, Regional Economic Relations, AFC, FTA, Secretariat, African Trade Implementation. Key actions. Increase AFC-FTA intra-Africa trade participation from 15% to 25% by 2026. Expand South Africa's foreign direct investment (FDI) strategy into emerging markets. Finalize permanent bilateral trade agreements with key economies China, EU, India and Russia. Final outcome: economic realignment and strategic growth. By implementing the Strategic Response Plan (SRP) within 12 months, South Africa can achieve GDP stabilization at 1.5 to 2.5% growth per year, avoiding US-related economic downturns, diversified trade relations beyond the US, reducing exposure to external geopolitical risks, stronger industrial self-reliance, increasing domestic production by 20% in key sectors, new job creation and skills development programs to support economic transition. Policy perspective and implementation framework. Strategic trade diversification, responsible office, DIRCO and DTIC. Expected impact: reduce reliance on the United States market. Implementation timeline 0 to 3 months. Bilateral trade agreements, responsible office, DIRCO, DTIC and Treasury. Expected impact: strengthen trade with BRICS. Expected impact: strengthen trade with European Union. Expected impact: strengthen trade with African Union. Expected impact: strengthen trade with the Middle East. Implementation timeline 3 to 6 months. Industrial Revitalization Plan, Responsible Office, DTIC and Economic Development. Expected impact: support local manufacturing and exports. Implementation timeline 3 to 6 months. Agricultural export expansion, Responsible Office, DALRAD and DTIC. Expected impact: secure new global markets for South African farmers. Implementation timeline 4 to 5 months. Energy Infrastructure Development, Responsible Office, DMRE and ESCOM. Expected impact: improve power supply for industrial expansion. Implementation timeline 6 to 7 months. Financial Market Stability Policies, Responsible Office, SARB and FSCA. Expected impact: prevent capital flight and stabilize currency. Implementation timeline 7 to 9 months. Regional Trade Expansion, Responsible Office, DTIC, DIRCO and AFC-FTA. Expected impact: strengthen intra-African economic partnerships. Implementation timeline 9 to 12 months. Conclusion and urgency for action. With US sanctions and AGOA termination looming, South Africa has a 6 to 12-month window to mitigate risks and realign its economy. The Strategic Response Plan (SRP) ensures that the country does not suffer severe economic setbacks while also positioning South Africa for long-term trade diversification, industrial resilience and economic independence. The South African government must act urgently to finalize trade deals, attract alternative investments, and implement policy-driven economic reforms to protect industries and jobs while fostering new economic opportunities. Key takeaway: the faster South Africa implements the SRP, the stronger and more self-reliant its economy will become, ensuring resilience against external pressures.